there was a lot of obstacles to trip over and stuff. That was kind of treacherous back there, so it was hard not to grab him and let him know that he was about to trip. I was just afraid he was going to bash his face on something. So
it was scary and it was sketchy, that's for sure. I didn't know where I was going.
Yeah.
I didn't know what the right directions were.
There's something very special about the book of Proverbs. I just call it the book of wisdom because there's so much wisdom in there. And as fathers and as men and as sons, we desperately need wisdom. And so that was the way that I wanted to kick things off today. Just talking about the wisdom of God and who we should be listening to gain that wisdom. We're going to start right in Proverbs 1. These are the Proverbs of Solomon. Let me jump down here to 1:8. He says, "Listen, my son, to your father's instructions, and do not forsake your mother's teaching." Isn't that interesting? So it's not just dad that can bring the stuff. Mom has good insight. And I know that in my home, my wife is very wise. And at times she's had counsel for the young ones, especially when they were little, that was it was clearer than my counsel. So it's not that women don't have good things to say. So the writer here says, do not forsake this instruction and teaching. They will be a garland to grace your head and a chain to adorn your neck. He said, my son, if sinners entice you, do not give in to them. We read on a little farther at 1:20. Wisdom calls aloud in the street. She raises her voice in the public squares. At the head of the noisy street, she cries out. How long will you simple ones love your simple ways? How long will mockers delight in mockery? Isn't that interesting? Over at Proverbs 2, my son, if you accept my words and store up my commands within you, turning your ear to wisdom and applying your heart to understanding, if you call out for insight and cry aloud for understanding, and if you look for it as for silver and search for it as for hidden treasure, then you will understand the fear of the Lord and find the knowledge of God. Interesting. This wisdom that he's talking about is to be searched out like a treasure. Guys, if we lost a $100 bill around here, if we lost a real expensive watch, buddy, we'd shut her down and go after it, wouldn't we? We would look. Finders keepers, let's go look. He's saying wisdom. It'll keep you from, as we read further, the fowler's snare. That's kind of an old word. It means if you're trying to catch a bird, you put a little net up and that crazy bird doesn't pay attention, gets in it, he's going to die. He's going to become dinner, okay? So wisdom, wisdom, wisdom. And I find it fascinating that he's saying that there would be others that would try to entice you to go the wrong way. Now, a big point here that the writer is making is that there will be good voices that call you to good things. And then what else? Tempting voices. Good word. Voices to entice you. How do you know which voice is telling you the right thing? How do you know? It's kind of hard to tell sometimes, isn't it? So, young guys, I could talk for hours and hours about this, but I'd like to demonstrate to you what I'm talking about. This is an active experiment, okay? Young man, you're going to be blindfolded in just a second, all right? Tell everybody your first name.
Levi.
This is Levi. Everybody say, hi, Levi. Hi, Levi. All right, awesome. And Dad, who are you?
Jody.
He's Jody. Everybody say, hi, Jody.
Hi, Jody.
All right, cool. Here's what we're going to do. This is going to represent, this area right here is going to represent mature manhood. Everybody got that? What does that represent? Mature manhood. Every young guy wants to reach mature manhood. They just don't know quite how to get there. Jody, you're responsible for Levi reaching mature manhood. But Jody's got a bad attitude. He doesn't understand how to be a good dad. So he's just going to basically provide. And what he's going to provide is just safety. So your job is to keep him safe, and safe in this instance just means don't let him smack into something hard. I mean, that's what I'm telling you to do. Do not let him hit anything hard, because he's going to be blindfolded. But Jody's got an issue. He doesn't like to talk to his son. That's a waste of time. You two guys may walk up that way and get ready, but don't start. Now the rest of us, remember this powerful passage in Proverbs? There were two sets of voices, weren't there? There were the good voices going, yeah, come on this way, it's safe over here. And then there were the ones going, hey, come the wrong way, all right? So here's the deal. We're gonna draw the line right here, so green shirt that way, you're the good voices. You guys, just because of the nature of your character, oh yeah, you're the bad voices. So in a minute when we start these guys, everybody's gonna stand up, and you guys are gonna tell Levi the wrong thing to do. You can tell him to go right, go left, stop, spin on his head, whatever you want to do. And you got to be loud, because the voice of the world is loud. Have you noticed? You guys got to help him, because his dad's not really a communicator. I'm not into all that communication stuff. You've got to be the voices that call him the right way to reach mature manhood. All right, Levi, go. Jody, in that role, just kind of talk to the guys out here. Well, how did you feel when you were limited and you really couldn't communicate with this young man, your son? Yeah. How'd you feel?
I was just frustrating, because I was just hoping that he was listening to the right voices, because some people were saying actually what to do. Luckily, in this case, those voices were a little louder, or they were a little closer. So, but there was a lot of obstacles to trip over and stuff. That was kind of treacherous back there. So it was hard not to grab him and let him know that he was about to trip. I was just afraid he was going to bash his face on something. So it was frustrating. I was just really hoping he was listening to the right voices.
It was scary, and it was sketchy, that's for sure.
What was scary about it?
I didn't know where I was going.
Yeah.
I didn't know what the right directions were.
Wow, are you hearing what's being said? It's scary because I didn't know where I was going, and I didn't know the right direction. Come on now. If a young guy doesn't hear the right voice, he is scared. I don't care if he's the biggest, most macho dude in the world. This is a tough young man right here, I can tell. But it was scary. Guys, all it takes is the right voice to lead him through this thing. What's your name, son?
Mike.
This is Mike. Everybody say, hi, Mike.
Hi, Mike.
What's your name, sir?
Lee.
Everybody say, hi, Lee. Yeah, I see you got this down. All right, you guys go get ready. Now, we're going to switch it around. We're going to do it the same. But this time, Lee, you're a good dad. You talk to that boy all you want. You can't touch him, but you can talk to him. Got it? And keep him safe. I mean, don't let him run into anything. But you talk to him all you want. All you want. Okay? Got it, Lee? Now, the rest of you, you're all lousy voices. There's not one of you in here that's a good man, so just let him have it. I want you to tell that young man to go the wrong way. Just mess him up every way you can without touching him, all right? Loud voices, tell him the wrong. Don't let him get here. Now, Lee, in this case, and I know Lee's a good dad, but in this case, he got to even play a good dad. So how was that for you, buddy?
It was a lot of work. I broke a sweat. Everybody was right up in us and hollering and physically putting themselves between me and my son. And I mean, they even brought out branches to make him think he's hitting a tree so he'd stop and turn. And it was difficult to keep him coming the right way. He couldn't. It was hard for him to pick up my own voice, I think.
So what did you have to do to be successful?
Just be consistent, make sure he heard my voice above all, and say the tone that he only knows that I can do, and get his attention so it was there.
Isn't that good?
Yeah.
He said, I needed to be consistent. I needed him to hear the voice that only I can make, that sound that only I as a father can make. They listen for the sound. And that was as crazy. I've done this quite a few times. I don't know that I've ever had a crowd that was so willing to participate. But that was amazing. All right, young man, how was that for you?
Something else. It was hard. You go around and I didn't know people were putting sticks in front of me.
Tell me how did you make it though? What did you do?
Well, you can kind of make out your own father's voice in the midst of it.
Yeah.
And it was so challenging at parts, but just trying to find out his own voice was the easier part of it.
Awesome. Good job. That's something I want you to be thinking about all day today, okay? Because this world is full of noise and it's full of voices. And if your son doesn't hear your voice often enough, when the crowd starts to gather and things that aren't feel like they are, and the counterfeit seems real, what they can link onto is your voice. It's your voice. So all day today, let them hear your voice. Let them hear good things. We have guys that come to man camp, and some of them have been outdoorsmen for years and years, and some of them have never picked up a gun or a bow or a fishing rod even. So when we get a chance to bring the guys together and try some new things, it gets pretty exciting, sometimes a little sketchy and a little scary. But man, today we tried out archery. What a hoot.
I remember when I was a little boy, my mother told me that, Brian, when you grow up, you gotta be good at something. And I have just discovered that it's not this. I am not good at bow and arrows. Thank you.
Man, that's a great shot.
One of my friends had shot the arrow and it missed the target and it went over the target. So we went out to look and search for the arrows, which there were like 3 arrows missing. And so in that process, I was able to find 1 arrow. Then I took that arrow and I straked the ground and I found another arrow. And then when I found the 3rd arrow, I was excited. And so in my excitement, bringing the arrows back in, I want to kind of feel like a kid again and do a flip or something. I did like a little half cartwheel. So that's what that was. It was a happy moment, feeling like, hey, maybe I can do it, but that was just the way I expressed outwardly.
When Brian Pruitt gets up to speak, I know 1 of 2 things is going to happen. Number 1, it's going to get loud probably. And number 2, we're going to end up with tears streaming down our faces. This time that he spoke, both of them happened. What a powerful, powerful young man, and what a powerful message.
Guys, let me hear you say mighty warrior.
Mighty warrior.
Let me hear you say mighty warrior.
Mighty warrior.
Let me hear you say mighty warrior.
Mighty warrior.
Let me hear you say mighty warrior.
Mighty warrior.
There you go. Take you to the locker room for just a minute. You are a mighty warrior. And here's what God says about you. He says that your children are like arrows in your hands. As a matter of fact, it simply says it like this: the children are like arrows in the hands of a mighty warrior. Let me hear you say mighty warrior.
Mighty warrior.
And when you look at your kids, what you should see is your arrows. I learned something about myself today. Not very good at shooting arrows. But my biological arrows, my children, I'm learning things this week that are going to put me in a position to be good at shooting those arrows. The bottom line is this: If our children are like arrows in our hands and we are mighty warriors, I read that scripture and I say, God, explain this to me. What does an arrow do for a mighty warrior? And this is what the Lord began to speak to me. It's simple. There are some things in your lifetime, there are some things that you as a warrior will get your hands on and you will defeat with your own hands. There are some victories you will win with your own hands. There are some things that you can sneak up on and that you can conquer, and your name, your stamp will be placed upon it. Look what God did through you. But there are a few things in this life that God has spoken over you that you may never reach, you may never touch, but your children are like arrows in the hands of you, you mighty warrior. I must sharpen my arrows, because arrows are like weapons in the hands of a mighty warrior. Some things I'll take out and I'll bring down. Some Goliaths I'll bring down. You look at the story of David and his son Solomon. God told him there was a few things that he would not allow David to build, but guess what? He allowed Solomon to build it. Shoot your arrows. Shoot your arrows. What God spoke to you is true. And he may use your arrows to bring about the victory. You may not know this young man, but you'll know him after tonight. Let me share a story with you. His name is Wells Crowthers. Wells Crowthers was a young man. He was just an arrow in the quiver of his father, who was a mighty warrior. His father was a New York firefighter. And Wells would always watch his dad go off to work, and whenever his dad would go off to work, his dad would always grab his red handkerchief and he would walk out of the house. And Wells would always see that red handkerchief, and he admired his father when he would grab that red handkerchief, because it just meant something. There were a few things that Wells' father would do to sharpen his arrow, to sharpen his son, understanding that he was just another arrow in the quiver. And God would use him someday to do things that maybe he could not do. And so here's what Wells' fathers did one day. He walked up to Wells and he says, Wells, I'm going to give you a red bandana like my red bandana. And I want you to understand, Wells, that this red bandana, it has meaning. It means something. He says, Daddy, what does it mean? And so Wells' father went to sharpening his arrow. It means three things, Wells. It means be willing. It means be prepared. And it means be brave. Let me say it again. Be willing, be prepared, and be brave. And so he used those three stones to sharpen his son, the arrow. Wells grew up, and as a little boy, you can see pictures of Wells literally 6, 7 years old, and he would have the red bandana wrapped around his head riding his bike, or he would have the red bandana hanging out of his back pocket. It meant everything to him because his father had gave it to him. It was a connection point. Everybody say connection. And so Wells grew up, and Wells went off to college, played sports. And when Wells played sports in college, underneath his helmet, guess what he wore? He wore the red bandana. It meant be willing, be prepared, and be brave. It was a connection point. Wells graduated from Boston, and he got his dream job. His dream job was working in the Twin Towers. He was working as a financial advisor. His father was watching the arrow that he had shot many years ago step into his purpose and accomplish his dreams and do incredible things. And Wells was working on the 100th floor. And there's a day that we mostly all in this room would remember, except for maybe the younger young men here. It's called 9/11. On 9/11, what simply happened, for those of you who do not remember and some of those of you who do not know, there were airplanes flown into the Twin Towers. And on the 100th floor of one of those towers was a young man by the name of Wells. He was a fresh graduate out of college, working his dream job. And when the plane crashed into the building, chaos, fire, and smoke. People died, people were dying, it was ugly. Wells immediately grabbed his cell phone. He called home and he called his mother. He says, "Mom, I'm calling to let you guys know that I'm okay." And then this was a statement to his mother. "I have the red bandana Dad gave to me. It's time for me to go to work." And he hung the phone up. Wells turned and immediately walked into the room where the ceiling had caved in and there was smoke and there was fire. And Wells literally said these words. He says, "If you can see me, I'm waving this red bandana. If you can see me, if you're still alive, if you can move, if you can walk, follow me. I know where the stairs are at. I know the way out." That's what we're raising, men. We're raising kids who know the way out of this mess that we've made. We're raising kids who know the way out of this mess that we've made in society. We're raising kids who know how to lead other kids who they go to school with out of the misery and out of the depression. I'm standing here today because somebody raised a kid who was waving a red bandana in my high school on the day I was headed home to commit suicide. And that kid knew the way out. He knew where the stairs were, and he invited me to church with him because he was driving me home and I was going to take my life. He had no idea he was waving a red bandana. I know the way out. I know where the stairs are at. I show up at his youth group with him. I give my life to Jesus Christ that day. 3 months later, his family introduced me to the Molitors. Here I am. 17-year-old boy whose father understood, my son is just an arrow in my quiver. He would do things and reach people that I may never reach. He was waving a red bandana in my high school. Wells began to lead people down the stairs to safety from the 100th floor, saving their lives. They said that Wells made it out to the street several different times. And then he would turn and run back up the stairs. He could have been safe, but that's not the way his father sharpened that arrow. He could have remained alive, but that's not the way his father sharpened that arrow. Wells, you be willing. Wells, you be prepared. Wells, you be brave. I will make you sharp enough to cut through the roughage. Wells ran back up the stairs several different times. He kept leading people down the stairs. One lady said that Wells literally put her on his back and carried her down the stairs. Another person said Wells carried them in their arms all the way down to the street. They couldn't walk, they couldn't move. And you say, how do they even know about Wells and all of the chaos and what was happening and all the people who died and everything that happened? You would say, how do you even know about Wells? Because when the chaos was over and they start meeting people who were on the 100th floor, when they would get testimonies and they would say, we were on the 100th floor. And they would say, how in the world did you get down? And they would simply say, the man in the red bandana. They didn't know his name. The man in the red bandana. I think that day Wells found a connection point between him and his father. And I think Wells just says, I'm gonna make my daddy proud today. This is how he sharpened me. He sharpened me to be willing, to be prepared, and to be brave. I'm gonna make my father proud. Wells died that day. 6 months later, they found his body. 6 months later. And when they found his body, they found it under a bunch of rubble. And they found Wells laying next to, get this, a bunch of police officers and firefighters. And what did Wells have on? He had a red bandana wrapped around his face so that he would not die of smoke inhalation. And that's how they knew it was Wells, because he was the man that was wearing the red bandana. I can only imagine the grief that his family must have felt. And at the same time, I can only imagine the pride that his family must have felt. That's your son. That's your daughter. Sharpen them. Son, I love you. Son, there's nobody like you. Daughter, you are absolutely beautiful. Sharpen them. Girl, did I tell you how beautiful you look in that dress? Sharpen them. Oh, son, I tell you, man, are you putting on more muscle? Sharpen them. Son, you are just absolutely intelligent. Sharpen them. Girl, if you walk by here one more time, I'm just going to faint because you just look so pretty. Sharpen them. Say, I'm a mighty warrior. Say, I'm a mighty warrior. Say, I'm a mighty warrior. Let's give God a hand clap. Come on.
Today was a real special day for me, and it was the day that my oldest son, Chris, got to join us here at Man Camp. And the poor guy, he tried to travel here from LA where he lives and had planes, trains, and automobiles. Everything went wrong, but he finally got here and brought to us this marvelous gift of music that God has blessed him with.
It's been 10 months since I walked those wooded acres that I've always known as home. The coast has kept me off to herself, but it is time to break her spell. Feels like rivers have flooded from my eyes as I've changed into a better man. I look up to the stars and know it's time to head back east, all the way